Hi guys, Tracy here. Welcome to Scrapchat. This is my question and answer series that I do every maybe 2-ish months. So I'm here in my scrap room and it's very fancy or tidy or anything, but I thought I would piece together a little Scrapchat, just answer a couple questions off and on throughout the day as I have time. There's sort of a lot going on here, so we'll see how it goes, but let's get started. So the first question was from back in February, and it was from Peggy. So Peggy asked me how my die cut storage was going because I recently changed my die cut storage from storing it all in their packages as they came, like all individual manufacturers, and the lines were all stored in little plastic bags or in cases. And what I did was I've changed it. I'm just gonna grab some of them. They all fell. So I changed it to these little cases that are color coded. And I've got a whole bunch of them. I have a whole drawer full of die cuts in these packages like this. And you guys know that I don't do a whole lot of scrapping from my stash, but when I do, I have found that having them sorted by color really helps. So for me, this is working out so far. I can't say that it's stood the test of time and that I'll never change back to the other way, but so far this is really working out well for me. It especially works well when I'm doing Project Life upstairs and I know I'm going to be working with a certain color scheme, and so I can grab my turquoise and pink or whatever the color combination is that I want. I can just grab those 2 packages of die cuts and have them on hand to use them. So far it's working, but I can't say that I've given it a huge try, but I really like how they're stored. It's really great. I'll just give you a little peek into my drawer for those of you who didn't see. That's what the drawer looks like. So thank you for your question, Peggy. So Project Life Starter asked me what trends in scrapbooking do you like, and what trends do you want to see go or make a comeback? So trends that I love right now are bright colors. I love the trend of bright colors that is happening right now. I love ampersands and typography and @ symbols and hashtags and all of those sorts of things. I love those trends. I love pineapples. I'm still loving chevrons, and that's probably not really a trend anymore. It's probably past, but I still love them anyways. I'm trying to think of what else is trendy. I love big scrolly words like this. Words in like a scribbly cursive handwriting. Love these. So those are the trends that I love. And what trends do I not like? I don't know, because I tend to not do something if I don't like it. Let me think. What don't I like? What is really not for me? So one trend that's really not for me is planner trends. So I do keep a planner and I use it and I do put some stuff in it and I do decorate it a tiny bit, but really decorating planners and buying a whole lot of stuff for my planners is just not something that I have room for in my hobby world right now. I only have a certain amount of time and money and energy to spend on crafting, and I really love 12 by 12 and I really love Pocket Pages and Project Life, so that's where I've decided to spend my energy. I did get into planners for a short time, maybe 2 years ago, and I decorated and I was doing weekly spreads, and even when I was decorating, I wasn't decorating as much as a lot of people do. I love looking at other people's beautifully decorated planners, but I don't, when I plan, I'm scribbly, like my handwriting is really poor and it's really messy and everywhere, like you would not want to see my planner at all. But it really works for me, and I find that if I'm trying to make my planner really organized and pretty with lots of decorations and stuff, I find that I get into a phase where I start to avoid my planner because it's a lot of work and maybe I've fallen behind, or maybe it's gotten messier than I want it to be. So then I start avoiding it and then it doesn't work for me anymore. So I have stopped doing that, and I have always used a digital planner for most family commitments and then my paper planner for my own world, and I'm using my paper planner less and less, actually. I do still use it, especially when I'm particularly busy, but I don't use it every single day the way I once did. So that's a trend that's changing for me, and that I'm not really into in the full way that a lot of other scrapbookers are. As far as things that I'd like to see make a comeback, I want to see more mini market stickers. Can we have more of these, please? October afternoon, because I love these. I don't know if they've stopped making them, or if I'm just not seeing them anywhere, but I love mini market stickers, and stickles are something that I really wish would make a comeback, because I love using stickles. It seems like not many people use them anymore, but I really love them, and I still use them, and yeah, so that's the thing I'd like to have a comeback. Yes, so I got a couple of questions about my pinched dishes, which are still packed, so my room here is still quite messy. Am I recording? Yeah, I am. My room here is still quite messy, so I have a whole bunch of these. A whole bunch meaning 3. Well, I have 4 actually, because I have a red one that I'm gonna put with my Christmas stuff. But they're like a faux leather, and they have these snaps on them, and then they snap together like this. I bought them because I thought they would make a good everyday tray to have to put scrapbooking stuff in. I like that there's no, I mean there are these little corners, but there's no like little corners to get stuff kind of stuck in. They're pretty flat, and you can flatten them out even more if you want to, obviously. I thought that they traveled really well because they flatten down, as you just saw. They can flatten down like this, and then you can just stick them in between some stuff. And they go together like that, but once a couple of them are together, you can actually stack them, and you guys have probably seen me with them stacked like so. So you can put stuff in this one, put stuff in this one, and put stuff in this one, and just stack them, and they take very little real estate on your desk or wherever you're storing them. So I really like them for that reason. You can still keep things separated out, but you don't have a big long tray to have to contend with. You can just put them all like this. So I really like them. People have asked me where I got them. They are from Chapters in Indigo, which is a Canadian bookstore. So they are a Canadian bookstore, like a big box bookstore, Chapters Indigo. They sell Kate Spade stuff, and they've got like a little gift area close to the checkout. So, and I waited until they went on sale, because when they first came out, they were quite expensive, like crazy expensive, like probably $15 a piece or something. And so I got my red one when it went on sale for $8, and then these ones I got one of these for $8, but then these two I got when they were marked down even more. They were $4 each. And I think $4 is reasonable for something like this. Even $8 I think was really a little bit too much, but I really do love it. So anyhow, I paid what I paid for them. It's done, and I like them. So that's my pinched dishes. Papers warping with gesso. So somebody asked me if I have a problem with my papers warping with gesso. I kind of feel like I already answered this question. I feel like I did. Anyhow, I'll go and show you what I do to keep my gessoed papers from warping. Actually, I'll just bring you, because you're easy to bring now. This is where I keep the paper that I do mixed media techniques on. I put this tray on top of them, and I just put them right here. So here's a piece with some gesso and some glass beads, and here are some pieces that are just gessoed. You guys saw me do, and this one has gesso with a stencil. So see how these pieces are, the top pieces are all mixed media pieces, and they sit fairly flat because they've been stored. This one is a little bit less flat, but still they're fairly flat. And that's because I just, sorry, this is quite bumpy. I just store them like that, and it works really well. So what I do is about once a month or every 2 months or whenever my stash of mixed media-ish backgrounds are gone. I hadn't been doing mixed media for quite some time, so they had lasted a really long time. It's only recently that I've started doing a little bit more mixed media, so when those ones are gone, I will take more cardstock and gesso a whole bunch more. Just because if you're going to take out your gesso, you might as well do a couple pages instead of just gessoing one, because it's just something that really looks nice on a piece of cardstock, so I do it often. My packaging for thickers. So somebody asked me, lots of people ask me about my packaging for thickers. I have thickers with me that I brought. I have thickers in my packaging, and I have thickers in... So here I have a package of thickers in their original package, and here I have a package of thickers in my packaging. So this is what they look like next to each other. And so what I normally do is I didn't in this case because this is just a newer set and I didn't get a chance to do it yet, is I open up this little flap that this piece of cardboard is contained in, and then I also take the stickers out and I throw away this packaging, but I keep the cardboard, and then I attach the cardboard to the top of my own 12 by 6 bag. Now, I find that when I first bought 100 of these bags, I just went on eBay and I searched clear bags 6 by 12, and you'll get some that have Ziploc ties and some that have the little flap with the glue, which is really similar to the package that they come in. But what I really liked was I wanted it to have an open top so that I could just slip them in and slip them out, and I store them like this, so it doesn't need a seal. So for me, I didn't want a seal, but if you want a seal, you can go ahead and do that. But these packages are just ever so slightly bigger, so see how it sticks out there from the thickers package, just slightly bigger, and that just gives you a little bit more room to be able to store some. This actually has 2 packages of the same kind of thickers in one bag, and I have stored up to 3 sets of thickers in one bag, and it works really, really well. So I will leave a link. I'm not entirely sure that I'll be able. I get a lot of people who ask me my source of those bags, but I bought them in 2 separate occasions, and so much time went by between when I bought my first 100 and when I needed more that I couldn't find the seller again, so I just searched again and bought a different set of clear bags. And they're slightly different. My new plastic the plastic on the new bags are slightly different, but I don't really care. So that's thickers. Next up, staplers. I have 2 staplers here to show you guys. I have my Tim Holtz Ideology Tiny Attacher, which looks like this. And I have my new, I've had this for ages, probably 7 or 8 years. Then I have my new Stampin' Up! Stapler, which works exactly the same way. And I also have a regular stapler here too. So I wanted to talk about these 2 staplers. This is a different size staple than these. I'm going to show you how they compare. And how they both compare to a standard staple. So this bottom one is the tiny attacher. This bottom one is the tiny attacher. The next one is the Stampin' Up! Stapler, and the top one is a standard staple. Now, if I had to choose between this and this, I would choose the Tim Holtz Tiny Attacher, despite the fact that they seem to break often. I don't know. Based on my own experience. So this is my tiny attacher, and it broke as soon as I got it, like probably within 2 months of me getting it. This black piece that is supposed to be a stretchy elastic, it was not very stretchy, and it's supposed to run from the top here to the bottom there, and then you basically pull back the red thing here in order to put your staples in there. Even without having that strip, the stapler still works. So I'm not even sure why they even put that strip there, because it's really not necessary. In fact, I can take it out and it doesn't make any difference in how the stapler works. I guess the reason that I would recommend this one over this one is that this one staples quite a bit more smoothly. And as long as it's working, I mean, I understand that they break. I've heard from people that mine isn't the only one that has broken. I can only really speak to my own experience, and mine broke right away, but it didn't break in a way that I couldn't use it. It just broke. So as far as using it on a day-to-day basis goes, it staples really smoothly. Like it feels good. You know when it's stapled. It has good feedback, like you can feel it in your hand when it's stapling. This one staples a lot more rough, and you're not going to be able to know without just like trying them to use them both. This one staples more rough, and you can't quite tell when it's stapled. I mean, you can, but it's not as good of a stapling experience. If I had to choose one or the other, I think I would still choose my Tim Holtz one. But if you want to be very luxurious and have two staplers because they are different sizes, I tend to use them both. So they're both fine. They both work the same way. You open it up like this. Only this one, instead of having a piece of plastic that runs between the two, it has a piece of metal. So this is never going to break like it did on my Tim Holtz one. But like I said, you don't really need it. Mine works without it. So anyhow, I thought I would just compare the staplers for you. And it's the kind of thing that you're not probably going to be able to see in the video because it's more of a feeling thing. Like this one just feels, it fits my hand better. It's curvy. It feels nice in my hand. This one is kind of boxy and doesn't feel quite as nice in my hand. And it doesn't give you the same kind of nice feedback. It's not as smooth. It's kind of a harsh staple, and this one's a nice smooth. So I don't know if that's reason enough to say, well, this one is better than that one, but I do prefer my tiny attacher over the Stampin' Up! One. And I'll keep on letting you know. If the Stampin' Up! One breaks, I'll let you know. But it doesn't seem as good quality somehow. So that's the tiny attacher. So I get a whole lot of questions about project life and where to start, and particularly about which pocket design to use when you have 3x4, 4x6, and 4x4 cards. So there's lots of options, and do I have any tips about that? And that's a specific question from Julia, but I also get questions on this topic in general, so I will speak to that. So, and I didn't bring my project life down here. It's really big and bulky and hard to hold up and show you for a video, but all of my project life is documented on my YouTube channel. So if you go to MercyTiara's Project Life playlist, you will see all of my project life. So, but I do have my binder here with all of my page protectors in it, and it doesn't have any Design A because I used Design A so much that I must have used it up. So basically, in my first year of doing Project Life, which I think was 2012, I used a combination of page protectors with different configurations. This is the Design A, which has some cards in it, but it kind of shows you the shape. It has 2 4x6s on the top, 2 4x6s on the bottom, and then 4 vertical 3x4s across the middle. And I consider this to be like the classic default page protector for a Project Life. And so in the first year, I used a whole variety, and the problem, it's nice to mix it up and stuff, but the problem is that when you use a different page protector on one side, you also have to use it on the other side. And so what I found, I've just started to find it really cumbersome using all different page protectors. So what I found in my second year of doing pocket scrapbooking is that I found it a lot easier to just use the same pocket page almost all the time, and then every once in a while I would mix it up. And so I decided to go with this Design A one as my default, and I use it almost all the time. And then every once in a while, if I happen to take a bunch of vertical oriented pictures, for example, I might use a different one, or if I have a whole bunch of squares I want to use, I might use a different one, but this is my default. Now this year, meaning 2016, my default is actually Design F, which is this one, which is a whole bunch of 3x4s and one 4x6. And the reason I chose this is that I was finding that most of my pictures are Instagram pictures, and I print most of them at 2x2. And so scrapbooking on a 3x4 card is probably the simplest and easiest way that I can streamline my process. So using mostly 3x4 pockets, it really works very well for me. But if you have a kit that sends you some 4x4 cards, I don't really know what to tell you. I do have some page protectors that have 4x4 cards in them, like N, and I think M does as well. So Design K, M, N, and O all have 4x4s as well as 3x4s. So this is K. It has 3x4s on the top and bottom. It has 4x4s on the top and bottom and 3x4s in the middle. M has 4x4s on either side and 3x4s down the middle in a horizontal orientation. N has vertical 3x4s on the top and on the bottom and 4x4s in the middle. And then O has horizontal 3x4s on either side and a 4x4 strip down the middle. So those are basically two different orientations of the same layout across M, K, M, N, and O. But none of those have 4x6, and that was one of the sizes of cards that you had mentioned. So I'm not entirely sure what I would suggest if I was getting all three of those sizes, but I would suggest trying to figure out what you might consider a good default page, which is a design that would meet most of your needs, and then get a comfort level with using that one, and then you can always sprinkle in a couple pages over here and there of another design if you want to. Or maybe you could do mostly pick one of either M, N, O, or K, and then use a page protector that has mostly 4x6s like this. You could kind of cut this in half and have 3 4x6s, which is actually 6 because it's double-sided. You could have that in the middle of your spread of either M, N, O, or K, if that works for you. And these are Becky Higgins Design C. And you can get other manufacturers make these as well. It's just 6 4x6 pockets on a page. So those are some options, and I don't scrap a whole lot with 4x4s, so I don't have a whole lot of ideas for you, but that's just what comes to mind when you ask that question. So I hope that that helps Julia and anybody else who is asking. But I think just my general approach is to have a default page protector and use it the most and get used to it, and then you can veer off of it if you want to, for either if you want to have extra to kind of shake it up in terms of what it looks like, or if you have different needs a certain month, you take more pictures of one orientation or another. So I received a couple of questions about how I mix my Project Life or Pocket Scrapbook pages in with my regular layouts. And so for the first year that I did Project Life, I did it weekly 2-page spreads, and I had a dedicated album to it. The second year that I did bi-weekly or monthly 2-page spreads, and I had a separate album that I did for it. And then the year after that, I started integrating it into my scrapbooks, and so I'm going to show you that because the Project Life books, the dedicated ones, are pretty straightforward, but the ones that are mixed in work a little bit differently. So I have 2 of my albums right here. This first one is from December 2014 to April of 2015. That was the period of time when I was doing this. My 2016 album is dedicated, so my pocket pages, and well, I'm taking the Project Life approach for 2016, and so those pages are in its own dedicated album, but last year and the year before I mixed them up. So I'll show you what these books look like. I'm just going to switch to the overhead angle for this. So you'll see that the first page here is actually a pocket page. It isn't always, but this just is the way that it worked out. And so this is a design N, so it has the 4x4s in the middle, and then the 3x4s on the top and on the bottom, and then on the other side. So the way that I would do my pocket scrapping when I did it this way was I would just do one single page at a time, and I'd do a spread here and a spread here, and they might be 2 different weeks or 2 different months or 2 different collections of, I wasn't really very strict with the timeline. Like I would just, some things would be on a 12x12 album and some things would be in pockets, and it was really depended on the, I guess, small things, like little everyday things would usually go in a pocket, and then something bigger that I wanted to make more of a note of would go on a 12x12. So, and then I have a page and a half here, so this is a 12x12 and a 6x12. And that's just some souvenirs in there, and then some more 12x12s, more 12x12s, more 12x12s. I think there are more pocket pages in here. Yep. So then here's another pocket page, and I had too many memories here, especially for the play that my daughter was in, so I just put a little insert in here, and this is just a design F that I just cut the bottom 4 squares and used it that way. And then here's the rest of those pocket pages, and then on the other side I did a little flip pocket because I had just extra things that I wanted to include in that. And then here's another page. So this is an example of, this happened over Easter weekend, and we had, I think there was a date night, and there was, oh, actually I think this is a combination of Easter and Valentine's, yes, because this was a Valentine's Day play, and then we had a date night, and then there were other things that happened, and then there was Easter. So that's why I have 2 pocket pages in a row. There's actually, 3 if you include this little insert. And then we're back to the 12x12 pages. So that's how most of my albums look when I'm integrating them. It's mostly 12x12 with a single pocket page every here and there, although in that one case there were a couple of pocket pages. So now I have a question from Sue's Fish, and she asks me a very interesting question, so thank you, Suze, for asking this. She says, as a crop-going psychologist, how do you feel an introvert would cope at a crop? I love the idea, but I don't know if the reality would be heaven or ... Ha ha ha. So thanks for your question, and I will try to answer it. I think it really varies depending on the introvert, to be honest with you. I am an introvert, so I feel like I can speak to this not only as a psychologist, but also just because I'm an introvert. So, of course, an introvert is a person who tends to turn inwards and is more energized by spending time alone. And sometimes introverts don't have as much fun or tend to avoid large groups of people, and other times introverts are okay in large groups of people, but just in kind of measured amounts. The opposite of an introvert is an extrovert, who is someone who turns outwards and gets energy from socializing with lots of other people. So I think that if we're just talking about introversion, I think that you can have fun at a crop and certainly go to a crop. But I think that, as you mentioned, the coping question is the big question in terms of, how are you going to feel comfortable and get the most out of a crop? So, and I just wanted to mention that introversion is different than social anxiety. So I think that people who have social anxiety, who have fears of social situations and excessive self-consciousness from being around people and fear of being watched and judged and criticized, that's a slightly different situation. And I think that a lot of people who have social anxiety might feel like a crop would be really overwhelming. And so I would have different advice for them. And I mean, the first thing to think about is that a crop is not an essential thing that people have to do in order to, live happy and satisfied lives. So you don't have to go to a crop if you really don't want to go. But I think that at least for me as an introvert, what I have found is that there have been times when I have wanted to go and socialize at a crop, but I've had some reservations about doing so just because I might not know what to expect or how socially demanding or exhausting it might be or that sort of thing. So I put together a couple of thoughts of how you might be able to do well at a crop, even if you are an introvert. So I think the first one is you have to think about to go or not to go, because you don't have to go. So first of all, I think you just need to decide if it's something that you really want to do, then go for it and do it. But if you're not sure if you even are interested in going to a crop, don't go to a crop just because everybody else goes, because it's not really necessary. So there are a few things that you can do if you do decide to go. One is make sure that you have a plan for taking care of yourself, because you might have different needs, and you very well likely will, because everybody has different needs. You might have different needs than some of the other people at the crop, and they might not know what your needs are if you don't tell them, or if you don't kind of look out for yourself, type of thing. So I think that sometimes introverts might find it helpful to go with a friend if you have a friend. I know some people don't know anybody who scrapbooks, and so they have to go to these things alone. But if you can go with a friend, that can really help buffer, and especially if you have some social anxiety, that can help as well, in terms of that you have somebody to talk to. And if you go with a friend who you know and trust and feel comfortable with, then you know that you can get some comfort from them. I also think that trying a short crop before you try a really long crop might be really helpful. So I just came back from a 3-day crop, and the first time that I went to that 3-day crop, it's overnight, like it's outside of my city. I'm away from my family for 3 whole days, traveling and kind of on the whole time. And so it's a big thing, whereas, especially for an introvert, whereas going to a half-day crop or an evening crop or even a full-day crop would be a slightly less intense, a very much less intense experience. So that's something to think about, maybe easing yourself into a bigger crop. So the other thing is make sure that you take breaks. And so, for example, when I was in New Brunswick on my crop recently, I got up early. I was sharing a room with 2 other ladies who are my very good friends. They're my very good friends, and I love them, and they're awesome, and I'm very comfortable around them. But we happen to have a different sleep schedule, and so I tend to get up quite a bit earlier than they do, which ended up working quite well because it gave me a chance to go down to the restaurant and have breakfast by myself. And I'm not one to normally want to go to a restaurant by myself, but I think it was I brought my book and read the newspaper and just ate and had coffee, and it was a really nice kind of time for me to be alone and not kind of on and socializing. Taking breaks like that, either big breaks like going away for a meal by yourself, or it might be worthwhile to not share a room if you're going on an overnight crop, and that will give you some space to be able to just kind of go back to your room and be by yourself if you need to, and not worry about roommates. Or you could stagger, if you have roommates, you could stagger your breaks with someone else's breaks so that you get a chance to go and kind of unwind and be by yourself. Also, one of the things that I sometimes did at Crop and Create was I would take a break from socializing and talking to people, is I might go and walk around the hotel, or I might go and shop for a little bit, or just kind of get a bit of a change of scenery can really help if you're an introvert. Make sure that you have the things that you need to feel comfortable, having your favorite snacks or certain music. You can listen to it with earbuds if you want to, for different parts of the crop, just to kind of have that to soothe you and make you feel better for little bits. I wouldn't recommend that you attend the crop and the whole time have your earbuds in, because then you might be perceived as being a little bit antisocial. But it's okay to do that for little bits of time if you need, just to kind of get inside your head and do your thing. I know when I'm scrapbooking, I tend to be really absorbed in what I'm doing, and so the whole world around me just kind of fades away. And so you know, people might be talking to me and I might not even hear them or respond. And so sitting with people who you feel comfortable with is really important, because if I were sitting with strangers, I would have to kind of keep myself from going into that zone, because I'd be mindful of the fact that if somebody's talking to me, I want to be at least aware enough to respond to them and talk back. Whereas when I'm there with my friends, I can just get into the zone, and I know that if they talk to me and I don't answer, they'll just like throw something at me or just ignore me until I'm out of it and ready to talk. So sitting with somebody that you know is helpful if they're around. Or also sometimes thinking about where you're going to sit in the room. So some people, especially with social anxiety, feel better if they can sit close to the door, or if they can sit close to, they need to know where the bathrooms are and that sort of thing. Just make sure that you take care of whatever your needs are so that you can feel as comfortable as you can in a social environment. And I guess my last tip for introverts going to crops is to make sure that you time it so that when you come back from your crop, you're not coming home and then hitting the ground running with other busy things. So I would recommend that after a crop, you schedule yourself a little bit of downtime before you have to go back to work or jump back into running around to activities and stuff like that, because you will probably be tired, because that's sort of what defines an introvert, is that social exchanges will drain you instead of energize you. And so you'll need to recharge your batteries a little bit after going to a crop, and that's okay. So just a little bit of strategic scheduling can help with that, so that you have a chance to just kind of decompress and relax for a little while after you're home from the crop. So Suze, thanks for asking that question. It was a great one, and I hope that you guys got something out of it. If anybody else has any tips, I didn't really think about going to a crop as an introvert until Suze asked it. So I haven't really thought too much about this until now. So if anybody else has any tips or ideas about what they find helpful with going to a crop, just leave them in the information, leave them in a comment below, and that way we can all learn from each other. That was just off the top of my head as an introvert. Those are the things that I would say we should think about, but there might be more that I missed, or there might be other things that I said that wouldn't work for some introverts. So go ahead and leave me a comment if you've got anything to say. So then Crafty Jen Scow and a few other people were wondering about scrapbooking in a basement, and am I okay with it? Do I ever wish that I wasn't in the basement? And look around me. I've got unfinished ceiling. The door case is not on yet. I scrapbook in a half-finished room. My floor, look at this floor. Up in an unfinished basement, and it can be a drag, I guess, if you think about it too much, but this is the only place that I have to scrap. I don't have any other room that is big enough to accommodate all of my stuff, and I mean this room is actually quite a bit bigger than I need, but we just don't have the space in the main living room of our house, in the main living floors of our house. If you don't think about it, it doesn't bother you too much. At least for me, I've never known anything other than scrapbooking in the basement. I guess when I first started off, I would scrapbook in the dining room. But actually, you know what? My house is mostly decorated in earth tones and neutrals and darks. There's a lot of, we've got a really dark floor, and it just, where we live in Canada, there's not always a whole lot of light coming in our windows anyways. So sometimes this room is actually brighter than any of the other rooms in our house, believe it or not. So I guess my thinking about scrapbooking in the basement is that if that's all you've got, then try not to focus too much on the negative sides of scrapbooking in the basement, because having a dedicated space is really great. It makes all the difference in the world in terms of being able to lay your stuff out and leave in the middle of a project and pick it up again when you're ready to. It's just awesome. So if you've got some space somewhere, whether it's a basement or an attic or a shed or or a really nice room in your house, just be thankful for what you have. And then I think figuring out and troubleshooting any of the downfalls of your space. So I have no windows in this room at all. There's not a single window. We do have a walkout, so the room right beside me has light in it, and the room beside it has like big, huge windows, so they get quite a lot of light. But this room has nothing, not a single window. So what I did was I installed, you can see one of my fluorescent lights. So when we built this room, we installed 2 fluorescent lights that you can see right there. You see that one of them has a little bit more of a yellowy tinge to it. That's because we replaced the light bulb with a warmer light bulb, just so that it wouldn't be quite so intense. And when we replace that light bulb, I'm not sure what we'll do, if we'll do the same or not. We were just kind of playing around with it. So invest in lighting is one of the best things that you can do. And if fluorescent lights bother you, then obviously those aren't the ones to choose. But we chose fluorescent, and we get the higher end fluorescent bulbs that don't make any weird noise, or they don't give off any kind of weird vibes or anything. They don't give me a headache or anything, is what I'm trying to say. But some people are really, really sensitive to that. So obviously if you're one of those people, then don't pick that kind of lights. But pick a kind of light that works for you, and invest in good daylight light bulbs, because that does not put any kind of color cast on my work at all. Everything is like completely bright white in here. And then I also have my video lights that are here and here, which you wouldn't need if you're not making videos, but they also give me a good source of light. And when I wasn't making videos, which, boy, I've been making videos most of my scrapbooking life. But when I wasn't making videos, I had like an aught light, and I had lights still shining everywhere because I scrapbook in the basement. So lighting is really important. I can't emphasize that enough. Also, I think the color that you paint your room makes a difference. You'll notice that my room is a nice cheerful yellow, and that makes a big difference in terms of the overall atmosphere in this room. So think about that as well. The other aspect of scrapbooking in the basement is that you tend to be isolated, depending on the setup of your house. So I know some houses are more of like a split entry level, where there's kind of a lot of space and flow from one floor to the next floor, and you can kind of call down, and there's like a big stairway that is open from one level to another. Our house is not like that. So when I'm in the basement, I'm in the basement. Like there's a closed door at the top of the stairs, and then the stairs, and then this door, and I'm in here. So I'm definitely very, very isolated from the rest of my family when I'm scrapbooking down here. And so there's a few things that I can do to offset that. One is when I'm not making videos, I tend to leave that brown door open and the door at the top of the stairs open, just so that I can kind of feel like I'm at least a little bit part of what's going on in the house. I often scrapbook when I'm alone at home, so that doesn't really matter. The other thing that I do to cut back on the isolation factor is, even though my kids are older now, we have held on to the baby monitors in the house. And so I keep the baby monitor on, not to monitor. I mean, sometimes I'm monitoring the kids and making sure they're not killing each other or anything, but it's more, there's a radio on upstairs, and I can hear when people are walking around. I know when someone has come home, and it's just nice to have that. So I keep the baby monitor down here as well. And then the other thing that you can do to cut back on that isolation is you can either play videos or music, or have a TV running, or something that will make you not feel so alone and down in a basement. And then I guess the last issue to consider when you're scrapbooking in the basement is humidity, heat, and bugs, depending on where you live. So the humidity down here is pretty bad. I mean, we live really close to the ocean. And so in order for me to store all of my paper products and have them not, sorry, I got a text, have them not go all warped is I have to run a dehumidifier. So I keep a dehumidifier running all the time, and I actually have to use the hose and hose it out to a drain, because if I use the bucket, I'd be emptying the bucket every single day. So yeah, a good dehumidifier is really important in some places of the world if you're scrapbooking in the basement. And my dehumidifier also has a heater on it, because it does, I mean, I live in Canada, so obviously it gets cold down here. You guys know I often have my Freudian slippers on when I'm scrapbooking. Here's Mr. Freud. So I wear those when I'm scrapbooking, and I always have a sweater in my scrap room. Sometimes I usually have two. I have three here today. So I always have a sweater in my scrap room, and that just helps. These are kind of obvious, I know, but just, you know, if you have to scrapbook in the basement, you might as well make yourself comfortable and enjoy it, because there are lots of downsides to it, but there's also some really good sides to scrapbooking in the basement. One is that I don't get interrupted as often, because I don't always hear what's happening. So little spats and disputes kind of work themselves out, and they come and get me for the bigger problems. Also, it's peaceful, and I can really get into the zone sometimes. It's great for making videos, because the noise of the family, people don't have to be quiet while I'm making videos. They can just go about their life, and I can be down here and it doesn't pick up at all because of the isolation. So, and then the other thing is that if I were not scrapbooking in the basement, I would not have anywhere near this much room. So it's really, really nice to have this much room, and it's worth it to be in the basement for me, because I love scrapbooking, and I would be happy anywhere as long as I get to scrap. So that's what I have to say about scrapbooking in the basement. Whenever I see someone else's scrapbooking room and they have like big, beautiful windows and natural light, I always feel a little bit envious of them when they're showing their room. But when I sit down here to scrapbook and I'm doing my thing, I'm never thinking, boy, I wish I had a window here. I just don't think that. And maybe, I don't know why, if it's because I've never had a window or what, but I just don't think that. I just kind of, I'm doing my thing. I'm not really thinking about my environment all that much. So I guess maybe some people are more sensitive to their environments than others, and maybe I'm just totally clueless about that kind of thing. Anyhow, that's my answer. If you guys have other ideas about scrapping in the basement or scrapping wherever you're kind of delegated to, leave me a comment below. And that's the end of this question. So thanks so much for asking it, Jen, and all the other people who second and thirded and fourthed that question.